What I want to talk about is what happened to the men on Extortion 17 that night. 17 Navy SEALs, 15 SEAL Team 6 Gold Squad, the most elite assault force the world has ever seen. 3 Air Force Special Operations, 5 SEAL Team 6 support, and 5 National Guard and Army Reservist aviation. And as Karen said, I tell you, I just got to where I took it for granted. Aaron would always come home. I did not expect my son to die the way he died. After the way he had trained for years and years before he was deployed, after the things that he had accomplished by being a Navy SEAL and the things that Navy SEALs do. I just think about in April of the year that Aaron was killed, the Alabama Maersk was seized by Somali pirates. These men fly halfway around the world in the middle of the night. 2 of them drop out of a plane in the middle of the ocean and are picked up by a naval ship to do the job that they do. Now, also dropped out that night were many other SEALs in the ocean and took boats. By morning, they had done their logistics, they'd done their intel, they were ready to wipe out the Somali pirate problem. There would be no Somali pirate problem today had they let the Navy SEALs go. But they were not allowed to. They almost were not allowed to take out the pirates. Did you know that? But we heard about the courage of the Commander-in-Chief. But I'm saying that to say this. That's who Navy SEAls are. My son was a Navy SEAL, and he was killed by an Afghan farmer. That is how compromised that our leaders in Washington, D.C., and our flag officers in the American military have made our warriors, and it's criminal. For nearly 2 years, I don't know how many times Karen and I went to Washington, always on our own dime, always going around speaking on our own dime, just trying to tell people what we were finding out and what was going on. And it's amazing that even the good congressmen and women didn't know what happened with the greatest loss in the history of naval special warfare. As we went there one time and sat down in Ms. Bachman's office, she couldn't believe what we're telling her. And Mr. Gomert was sitting there, and staff from Mr. Frank's office. And I said, you know, it's a shame that a mother and a father of a dead warrior have to come tell Congress when you're making $174,000 a year and you don't know until we tell you. That's where we are in this country. I didn't know where we were either with the military until our son got killed. I know Aaron would come home and he would complain and he would tell me things that happened, and I'd talk to my friends and I'd complain, and you know, he'd always come home before, and I thought he always would, until that day that my daughter called me on the phone and she screamed, "Daddy, he's dead." As I said, warriors get killed. But you know what? When they get killed, you want them to get killed fighting the battle. Not cooped up in not just a 1960 model, but a National Guard helicopter. The kind of chopper you would see at the air show. And I don't blame the chopper. Boeing tells you what that chopper is designed to do. It's designed to haul cargo. And you know what? We speak and we talk about that chopper, and you'll always have somebody say, "We've been flying on this chopper forever. We've been doing this forever." You know what? I don't care. Navy SEALs have not been flying on them forever. The chopper was never designed to be an assault chopper. I didn't know any of this stuff. We've learned these things. That night they went into battle, they were flying in a chopper that was never designed to do what it was doing. Was it safe for what it was made for? Yes, it was. But there are choppers that are made for this, MH-47s, flown by the Night Stalkers, the 160th Aviation out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and they're designed to do what the SEALs were doing that night. But we were told by Admiral McCraven when he came to our house that the CH-47 is just as good. Well, Admiral, it's confusing to me then, because according to the military report, it says here that on June 6, 2011, 2 CH-47s went in on an op, and they had to abort because of RPG fire. But later that night, an MH-47 went in by itself and completed the mission. Well, I just want you to know that your son was comfortable in flying in those choppers and the way that we were operating. Well, Admiral, your own task force commander testifying under oath, when asked what's your comfort level with operating with general purpose forces and SOF forces, "Sir, my comfort level is very low. We were afraid we were going to find ourselves in a situation like we're in right now." What does the Admiral say? He has no response. But it's lie after lie. Lie after lie. And we really don't know if he was lying or if he really wasn't informed about anything that was going on. And I had spoken about the 3.5-hour firefight underway when they sent the chopper in without an escort, without any pre-assault fire. And he politely reprimanded me that day that the reason why there was no pre-assault fire is because the operation was over. The Rangers were in the questioning phase of the op, so there was no need for any pre-assault fire. All right, if there's not, then why do you have 30 Americans on one chopper, plus 7 Afghans? Let me tell you what a SEAL from SEAL Team 6 told us. He's on a different squad. But he met with Karen and I tell you what he told us that night. He said, I can tell you right now, if all those guys crawled on one chopper, they knew something bad was going down. We had an Army Ranger tell us, Mr. Vaughn, that night we were watching from the Advanced Operating Center the op take place. And as the chopper went in, the Rangers were still taking fire when the chopper was shot down. A few months later, that same Navy SEAL who had told me, he said, I'll get information from a guy that's a good friend of mine that was in theater that night. He called me and he said, I'll tell you what I found out. The reason why all the SEALs got on one chopper is because the intel they had and what they were watching, the landing zone was so hot that they knew the second chopper wouldn't get in. So they took the risk all to get on one chopper. Now that's who SEALs are, okay? But when they do something like that, they need to have the equipment to make those decisions. Because let me tell you, you may think what I'm telling you is crazy about what I just said, but I know my son. You could not have kept him or any of those Navy SEALs off that chopper that night if they knew they were needed. And that makes it that much worse when you give them crap to fight with. Coming in, according to the military, 30 seconds from touchdown, flying at 58 miles an hour, that an Afghan farmer, now the military called it a lucky shot. No, it wasn't a lucky shot. It was a calamity because of the way we're operating in Afghanistan. The first newsman that came on, Karzai reported. Why did Karzai report? Why was he the first one to know that the Navy SEALs had been killed? Why do you think? When Aaron came home from Afghanistan in 2010, one of the things he told me is, Dad, when we go out on an op with the Afghans, we never tell them where we're going until we get there. Because if we do, the enemy knows. A lot of times when we get there, they won't fight with us because they're friendly with these people. And Dad, they're always loyal to the highest bidder. Now, since Aaron died, we've heard from other SEALs, from SEAL Team 6, retired SEALs. One, Mr. Vaughn, our greatest fear is getting shot in the back of the head by one of our Afghan allies at night when we're on an op. We've told our leaders, but they won't listen to us. Mr. Vaughn, we've been telling our leaders forever, one of these nights a suicide bomber is going to get on one of these choppers with us. We know the Afghans, but our leaders tell us we're not being logical. Now, we were given a disc when we left a debriefing in October, where we were told we were trying to win the hearts and minds and being too aggressive and all that stuff. Well, when we left there that day, I heard two things that upset me very much. One, that they were on a National Guard helicopter, CH-47, built in the 1960s instead of an MH-47, and I asked the question, why were they not on an MH-47? General Jeffrey Colt, we don't have enough because of the stepped-up operation. This was at the same time that President Barack Obama was telling everybody we're slowing down operations in Afghanistan. Well, to us, they were, because conventional forces were slowing down. But the special ops forces increased during the same period of time. From 2009, when President Obama took office, about 56 a month special operations missions. By 2010, they were averaging 186 a month. From August of 2010 until July of 2011, a month before Extortion 17 was shot out of the sky, the average monthly special operations missions in Afghanistan theater alone was 335 a month. The after investigation report by General Jeffrey Colt says the number of missions exceeded the number of able and capable aircraft to carry these special operators on their missions. That, the fact that they were on the wrong chopper, and the fact that when they were shot down, that the most lethal air weapons team the world's ever seen didn't fire because of the rules of engagement. That was the statement the general said, because of the rules of engagement. I asked it 3 times. Are you sure it was because of the rules of engagement? Yes, because till the third time Karen said, he's already answered your question. Well, when I left there, I began to call congressmen, most of who did not return my call. Congressman Allen West, Congressman Stephen Fincher, Congressman Tom Rooney of Florida, I did talk to. And Congressman Rooney was our congressman in our district at that time. So I told him those things. And several weeks later, his staff called and said he's going to a classified meeting of the House Arms and Service Committee. And West was also there. And he said he's going to get answers to your questions. Right before Christmas on 2011, I got a handwritten letter from Rooney. He did not address the chop at all, but the rules of engagement he did. He said, Mr. Vaughn, I found out that it was not because of the rules of engagement. It was because they did not know where the shots came from. And I knew that that was an outright lie. At that point, I called SOCOM and talked to the man who worked under General Jeffrey Colt. He's now colonel. He was a lieutenant colonel then. And asked him again to tell me what happened that night. And he went through it again and said, yes, because of the rules of engagement, they didn't take him out. I didn't tell him that somebody had lied to the congressman. I called the admiral over Naval Special Warfare. Told him what the congressman had said. I said, why would they say that? I don't know, Billy. I said, You were there. It was because of the rules of engagement. He said, Billy, you heard the same thing I did. I don't know. I didn't know what to do now. So I sat there for 2 weeks through the Christmas in January of 2012. And one of the other families, a man in that family, he said, you need to look at that disc. Well, I went in there and put the disc in. And I began to go through the disc, and it was so much there, so I printed it out. And like I said, it was about 1,300 pages. Another 250 pages totally redacted, totally blacked out. But what is in that you can't believe. I'm not a military expert. My wife, who knows less about military than I do, she uses the illustration that in any Western movie or any cop movie, when somebody's moving from one place to the other, they lay down suppressive fire. Cover me. They weren't allowed to have any pre-assault or suppressive fire that night going into a hot landing zone. But one of the first things that I came across, by this time, the leaders in Afghanistan are standing before General Colt and testifying under oath and telling them how we operate in Afghanistan. And they say that we operate with the Operational Coordination Group of Afghanistan. It's made up of the Afghan National Army, the Afghan National Security Ministry, and the Afghan National Police. These guys have eyes on every special ops mission that takes place in Afghanistan. They have the eyes on, they have the intel. The only thing they don't have is they don't know where we got our source from. Everything else we give them. We give them the flight routes. We give them where we're going. In fact, we have to clear the ops with them. They have the authority, although they almost never do, to squash the op. So, in theory, we have lent our special operators out to the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. Now, we have a president who has done this, and he needs to be put in the pen for that. But also, we have a Department of Defense, and we have high-ranking military leaders that ought to risk their career and say, I won't stand for this. Because the flag officers are sworn to uphold the Constitution. They are not sworn to keep allegiance to the Commander-in-Chief. And they are not doing their duty to this republic or to the warfighters on the ground and in the air in Afghanistan. Now, this Operational Coordination Group is not vetted by the American government because of an agreement with the Obama administration, Department of Defense, and the Karzai government. There is no way that our missions in Afghanistan can be secure. I can understand if you sit out there and shake your head and say, no, this can't be true. I promise you this is true. But when you look across the spectrum of everything else that's going on in the United States of America today, that makes it a whole lot easier to believe, doesn't it? That's why Karzai was the first to come out with who was on the chopper. Now, after a press conference in May in Washington, D.C., we had a guy call us, and when he was in Afghanistan, his job was to vet the Afghanis who would be working with our operators as they trained them. And when I asked him about the Operational Coordination Group, he said they're the military's greatest nightmare. We're not allowed to vet them. We're not allowed to ask any of them questions. They have a building on a base right next to wherever our buildings are. We're not even allowed to go in their building and see what's going on. Also, our military knows that the Operational Coordination Group is infiltrated with the Pakistani secret police. They know that. As early as 2009, the American ambassador to Afghanistan made the statement that we believe at least 25% of the Afghan National Army is infiltrated with Taliban. Yet we continue to operate the same way. On May 1st, 2011, Aaron called home on that Sunday night. He says, Dad, we got him. I said, got who, son? Oh, Dad, I can't tell you over the phone. Think about it. We got him. He said, go in and turn on Fox News. In about an hour, they're going to report it. They don't know what they're going to report yet, but they are going to report it. Well, I don't know if any of y'all remember, it was Geraldo that night who was on, saying, oh, something's big's happened. I don't know if we declared war on Libya. And all of a sudden he says, what if we've got bin Laden? The next day, Joe Biden outs the Navy SEALs. Aaron calls home, tells his mom, get everything off social media. There's chatter. Our lives are in danger. Mom, your lives are in danger. All the family special operators' lives are in danger because of what's happened. Secretary of Defense Gates comes out and says, we all agreed not to tell the details of what went down, but on Monday morning. On Monday morning. I mean, come on. Who are these freaking people? On Monday morning, it's like some kind of cheerleader at a high school with gossip. Less than 12 hours later, after Obama has been on TV, Uncle Joe comes on and tells, why? Why do we have to know? Why do we ever have to know what SEAL Team 6 or any other special operators have done? That's part of the mystique of it. Who was it that did it? We don't need to know. But he does because he's an idiot. And I tell you what, That guy should have had his teeth knocked out when he walked up to Charles Woods, Tyrone Woods' father. When that man is grieving his son, he walks up and said, "Boy, your son really had some balls." I mean, come on. Now, Biden didn't show his face at Dover when we met Obama and Leon Panetta, who, by the way, outed SEAL Team 6 also on Aaron's birthday, June 24th, 2011, at a speech where Hollywood producer was present. 264 pages that's now come out for the Freedom of Information Act. It was covered up by the Obama administration to not let this information get out until Panetta was out. But now it's out. And McCraven and other special operations leaders expressed their concern. In fact, McCraven went and talked to the families of the men who were on the bin Laden raid and told them that he was worried about this. But this is how they protected the families. If you see anything suspicious, give us a call. Now, I mean, they tried to shut me up and Karen up when we were on the Today Show, and I made the statement that there are wolves in Washington, D.C. that are getting our sheepdogs killed. And they didn't like that. And I and her, who know nothing about operational security and what's going on, were told that we were making it unsafe for the SEALs. But Biden is still the Vice President of the United States. Now, the things that we began to find out as we moved along, right out of the report, everybody on the flight manifest was who they were supposed to be, except for the 7 Afghans on board. We don't know to this day. But when McCraven came to our house, he brought with him a senior enlisted advisor. And I asked that question. I said, must not have been a very big deal. McCraven sat there, stone-faced, silent. The senior enlisted advisor said, "Mr. Vaughn, it's a very big deal. That should have never happened." In fact, when the chopper was shot down, those men's families had to be re-notified and tell that their loved ones were still alive. And he said, "Mr. Vaughn, what happened was at the last minute, a commander swapped out those 7 Afghans." Well, I didn't think to ask what commander. But he kept right on telling us things that we didn't know, because we didn't know what to ask about that. But he went ahead and said, "Mr. Vaughn, Ms. Vaughn, I also want you to know, at the ramp ceremony at Bagram Air Base, the rest of your son's squad was terribly upset and mad because an Afghan was allowed to speak at the ceremony." Here again, the U.S. Joint Special Operations Command leader sat here and didn't say a word, but this man says, "Have y'all ever gotten your copy of the ramp ceremony?" We said, "No." He said, "I'll make sure you get one." A couple weeks later, Karen emailed him, said we hadn't gotten it. He said, "You can't believe how much red tape I've had to go through." He said, "I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll send you mine." And he overnighted it. And we got it. But back to the 7 Afghans, I didn't ask what commander. So I called SOCOM. This colonel, who I'd spoken to several times, told him what the senior enlisted advisor had told us. And I said, "Do you know who the commander could have been that swapped out the 7 Afghans?" Now, this guy worked under General Jeffrey Colt and was on the investigating team in Afghanistan for about a month from the time of the crash until they brought the families in the 23rd of October. He says, "Mr. Vaughn, we didn't know that happened. We were never told about the 7 Afghans." And he said, "That's very puzzling because the 7 Afghans that should have been on the chopper would have been the ones that your son and his team was training. And I don't think they would have wanted to swap them out for anything." So today, we still don't have that answer. We've had many people wanting us to shut up. But the war fighters on the ground, please keep speaking. Please keep speaking. At the same time, our military budgets are being cut like crazy. We're giving billions to our war fighters' enemy. We are fighting the Taliban, who is al-Qaeda, in Afghanistan. That's the words of the military. The OCG, they talk about the 3 groups. In Afghanistan, they say the Taliban is al-Qaeda with the Taliban hat on. They talk about the Haqqani network, and they call them the most, and this is in 2011 when this is written, right after the crash, being the most lethal network that our warriors fight in Afghanistan. But September of 2012, Hillary Clinton finally made the decision, under much pressure, to name the Haqqani network as a terrorist group, when our warriors have been fighting them for years in Afghanistan. It is unreal how we are being deceived by our leaders in Washington about what our warriors are coming up against and what is going on in this country. The taxpayers are arming the enemy. The families of the men and women over there fighting, their taxes are arming the enemy that their family is engaging. The things that are going on are beyond belief. There were times when Aaron and I would be alone and he would tell me things that went on in an op about something that they did or they had to do. And a question would race through my mind. Is there maybe something you could have done different? But I would quickly catch myself because never did I want to put one inkling of doubt in my son's mind that the next time he deployed, he might think Dad said, and it might cost him his life. But what has happened is our commander-in-chief, our flag officers, our JAGs have put that doubt in men's and women's minds by having them second-guess themselves over and over again about whether they should engage the enemy or not. Let me tell you something else. Not only are we arming the enemy, which is against the law, the rules of engagement that our warriors are forced to fight under, just like the air weapons team that night who did not take out the man. Every time they fire a missile or they use those lethal weapons, they are investigated. We've heard it over and over again from the men on the ground where they can't get approval to take the shot to engage the enemy, even though the enemy is engaging them. The rules of engagement are not laws. They are rules that are set down by the commander-in-chief, that are enforced by the JAG, and our Uniform Code of Military Justice is not any kind of a justice system. It is a penal system that is set up to find a warrior guilty. It is not by the Constitution a jury trial by your peers as ours. It's a panel of military leaders who have said that they intend to find this man guilty. Where you and I will have to be proven guilty, the man who breaks the rules of engagement is guilty until proven innocent. Now, the same families, the taxpayers who are sending these war fighters over there are the same families financing the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And I'll tell you, it's backwards and it has to be stopped. The men and women who volunteer to go over there and fight, the minute they sign their name on the dotted line, give up rights to the Constitution, but if they're out in the field and instead of killing the terrorist, they capture him, that terrorist gets rights to the Constitution, and the moms and the dads and the wives and the brothers and sisters and the sons and daughters who pay taxes at home pay for the lawyer for the terrorist. Now, yes, we're arming the enemy. We are allowing an Afghan farmer to take down SEAL Team 6. I mean, we allow them to take down men that if they're on the ground or they're on the sea, they control the environment. But we put them in a situation where they are totally depending on somebody else to keep them alive. And the ones that they depend on to keep them alive are those above them. And they have failed them, and either it's because of incompetence or complicity, the results are the same. Now, if you were driving down the highway and you were driving too fast and you run over somebody on purpose and nobody knew it, or you ran over them accidentally, you'd be treated the same because the results are the same. And that's what needs to be done with these people in Washington, D.C. It has to be done or we're going to lose our republic, because if we lose our military, none of the other stuff makes any difference. If we lose our military, it's over. And our military is being demoralized every single day. Robert Gates has just come out with a book that has validated a lot of the stuff that Karen and I have been saying for 2 years while people have been asking us to shut up. But I wish Mr. Gates had to come out with it when he knew it was going on. But the cost was too high, he decided back then to come out with it. But think of the families who would not have sat around Christmas dinner this year with that empty seat there where mama or daddy will never occupy it again. Think about the families with the hole left in their life. Let me tell you something else. The very fact that like-minded people in this room cannot agree whether Snowden is a traitor or not shows you what kind of shape we are in this republic. Because I'm on both sides. Because our government is out of control at every angle. And it's not just Obama. It's the left and the so-called Republicans. When John McCain stands there and calls Ted Cruz a wacko, if he'd have called Barack Obama a wacko, he might be president today. But he only makes nice with Barack Obama. And then the Republican Party, we have the loser John McCain in 2008. And who do they give us in 2012? The loser to the loser from 2008. I don't know what the answer is, but the answer is not the Republican Party anymore. The answer is not Washington, D.C. It's a cesspool. It's a place when you go into it, you can almost feel a giant sucking sound as you see everything around there being built up, looking like a rich kingdom because the money is being taken from the 50 states in the Union. Their power has to be taken from them. Time is short, folks, or they're going to have us all. Thomas Paine said, if there must be trouble, let there be trouble in my time so that my grandchildren can live in peace. Let's have trouble now. If that's what's coming, we can't stand and talk much longer because they're running over us. They don't care that we talk anymore. A few years ago, they kind of stood up and listened and defended themselves when you talked about voter fraud. Today, they don't even care. They know there's voter fraud, but they're rolling right on because their agenda is coming fast, and it's coming quickly. And it's not just Barack Obama. There should be respect for the presidency from the citizen. But There should also be respect for the presidency from the man who's in the office. And he has not shown the respect for the office that he holds to the American people, for the American people to respect him. Now, mention about Snowden, how we could all argue over that. You know another dilemma we have? Or I did. When we were about to attack Syria, and I see President Obama's statements and John Kerry's statements and Vladimir Putin's statements, I believe Vladimir Putin more than it's just. And in Syria, we're sending money to Al-Qaeda, and we're arming Al-Qaeda with weapons that can be used on our warriors in Afghanistan. Now, I'm telling you something, folks. This is not a political snafu. This is not something for political fodder to cause somebody to lose an election. This is something for somebody to be tried in front of a military court, and if convicted, to be shot in front of a firing squad. I don't know who it is, but I've got a suspicion that it goes right to the Oval Office. But there are many in line that know what's going on, and they know they're breaking the law, and they know it is endangering the lives of men and women who have volunteered to go and fight for this republic because they love this republic more than they hate the enemy that's in front of them. And I'll tell you what, the people in Washington, D.C., or in the military who are allowed for this to be going on, they need to be charged, and if they can be... Now, I don't know how we do it. I don't know how we do it because we don't have a leader who has the guts to stand up and call it what it is. What do we do? And here again, it's the truth. It is the truth. It's hard to believe it's going on, but it's the truth. But tonight, I want you to take the things that I have told you and make sure that I have told you the truth. And if I have, then we as American citizens must act.
We need the United States of America to stand up here and help us out to get some answers. Michael was home in June before he left to go over there, and the first time that he was in almost 8 years, he was with SEAL Team 6, almost 4, he grabbed me by the bicep, and he said, "Dad, I got a will." I said, "Mike, what are you talking about?" He said, "Dad, I'm not effing around." The next day we went over to his friend's house, and they had a pool and a big party. It was his birthday, June 6th, and he was the same thing. He grabs me. He says, "Look, Dad, I'm telling you, I got this will written out." I said, "What's going on? You all right?" And he just looked at me. I said, "Get out. What's going on?" And then the last time I seen him was at the end of the party, and he grabs me again, and he says the same thing. And then he stops in Fishtown at Aunt Maggie's house, my sister, and he talks about the will. My sister says, "What's going on, Michael?" He said, "Something's going on with the team. Somebody's leaking some things out." They knew something was up. Every one of them. One guy, he used to tell his dad, "Make sure you got a lot of cold beer in the fridge, Dad. Don't drink it all." This time he grabs the father by the shoulders, looks him in the eyes, and thanks him for how he raised him. Another guy from the team, Kevin, he tells his mom the same thing. Everybody left a different way. They knew something was up. Something was going on. Me and my wife been down to Washington probably 7 times with the Vaughns and Mr. Hamburger and Larry Clayman and Jet Li's dad, John Dugandera, because he looked like Jet Li. He was the dog handler. After it happened, in October, General Cole does the investigation, and we're in this room, and he said, "I went through a chain of command." So I raised my hand. I said, "Got the names of that chain of command?" And his neck snaps, and all the bigwigs are there, all the 4 stars, and they make a fist like it's in a book. They give us a book. They said, "It's in the book, sir." I said, "About an after-action report?" He said, "It's in the book." I said, "What happened to the black box, which is really orange?" And he's looking at me, and he goes, "A flash flood came and washed the black box away." I found out that there's not only one black box on them Chinooks. There's one in the front, and there's one where the guys sit. They were in like a hangar in Afghanistan with all 38 bodies. General Votel was there with a couple hundred men, and then they let this imam come in, and he's talking in Arabic. We've had over 8 different translators. They condemned our sons as the white devils, infidels. When it happened, August 6th, the Navy kept telling us everybody has to be cremated. And in December, I called Dover and I asked for the autopsy reports, and they sent us a disc with the pictures too. And Michael jumped out of the helicopter. There was 8 of them that jumped out. Michael was fighting for his life. I have pictures of him, and I showed them to Jason Chavez, and he picked right up on it. He said he was intact. He was fighting. He had a gun in his hand. My son was there fighting for his life. And they didn't even send in the rescue team right away. I got it in the paperwork. They held him back. This was all planned. Petraeus left 10 days after it happened. He disappeared to the CIA, and then Benghazi happened. Admiral Eric Olson, he left 2 days after the crash, August 8th. And then in the report, General Colt that did the investigation said, was there any survivors? And the son of a bitch says, we have a 30 to 45 second video of a body cool down. So they watched my son die? That's what it says. I'm not military. It's in the paperwork. It's what they gave me. All I have is what they gave me. A lot of the parents can't take it, but a lot of them are getting threatened by the command. They told the wives to tell the parents not to go with Mr. or Mrs. Strange, or them checks could stop. Or the kid that don't have a father now might not get a scholarship for college. Michael got the Medal of Valor this week, the second highest there is. I wasn't invited. My phone's tapped. I get different text messages with numbers. You can hear them clicking, and the Taliban put on after it happened, after they killed bin Laden, that every SEAL Team 6 and their bloodline will be wiped out. And I've been threatened by the command. They should knock it off, Mr. Strange. And then for the command guys to tell me, Michael knew what only 4 people in the world know. This is like August 10th.
Michael was killed August 6, 2011, in the biggest loss of life in the Iraq and Afghan war, 30 guys. 93 days after the bin Laden raid, he was involved in that. It was the biggest loss in any war, 22 guys from the DEV group, Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Michael came home in June, and he was different. And that was the first time Michael talked about a will in 8 years. Michael was part of SEAL Team 6 Gold for 4 years. This was his call name, Gold Yankee 4. When I started asking questions, me and the Vaughns, a couple of the other families, the NSA started tapping my phone. Went into my computer, started following us, and we won the first case in the history of America against the NSA November 18th with Judge Leon. Our lawyer was Larry Clayman. No, it's not all right to come in my house and watch me. I had a computer expert look at my computer. He said, Charlie, when your computer's unplugged, they're still watching you. Because I'm asking what happened to my son. Because they know about Extortion 17. It's bigger than Benghazi. It's bigger. 30 guys, 22 of our best SEAL Team 6 guys get killed 93 days after the bin Laden raid. You know what they told me happened to the camera? The drones? They had a glitch on them when my son got killed. They put him in a 1960 helicopter, refurbished in 1985. Ask any SEAL how many missions he did in a Chinook helicopter. My son was never in a Chinook until he got killed. There's something wrong. I just went to the Pentagon 2 weeks ago for a closed-door meeting, me and my wife. We met with Mr. Gary Reed, head of the Department of Defense. I said, Mr. Reed, May 10th, 2011, 100 Taliban are coming from the blank Providence to the Tanzine Valley to shoot down the coalition force. They knew. No. I said, Quarry Tahir, a high-level mark, knew SEAL Team 6 was coming. He moved to a different village. You can't believe everything you read on the internet, Mr. Strange. I said, sir, the only information I have is what you gave me, the 1,300 pages. They just didn't know my wife was going to figure out how to download the disc. So I pull out Exhibit 89. I says, it says it right here, Mr. Reed. You didn't read the 1,300 pages. And Mr. Reed's pretty slick. He's programmed. His one sentence is 5 minutes long. You can scream at him, yell at him. I said, you didn't read the 1,300 pages. You know what he said? He said, I watched your press conference. I read a book one of the families wrote, and I read the 25-page summary. I said, the biggest loss in Iraq and Afghanistan, 30 of our sons and daughters? You didn't read the report? The biggest loss in any war, 22 guys from the DEV group? You didn't read the 1,300 pages? He said, no. Well, then how are you going to answer my questions? Because I read the pages. I said, here's Exhibit 63. They knew. Here's Exhibit 86. The Taliban were bragging a half hour after my son went down. They just killed SEAL Team 6 on the internet. They're bragging. They just killed SEAL Team 6. It's right here, black and white. You gave it to me, Mr. Reed. Our government made the mistake and gave me a disc. And what happens with our government? They don't think nobody thinks. They don't think none of us think. They're going to think for us. That's what the fucking problem is. We got to stand up. We got to get thousands down here, man. I don't need Obamacare. I don't need Obama nut. I don't need none of that. I was in Dover when my son's body was coming in. Obama grabs me by the shoulders. He says, Michael changed the way America lived. I grabbed Obama by the shoulders. I said, I don't need to know about my son. I need to know what happened. I said, is there going to be a congressional inquiry about this? He said, Mr. Strange, we're going to look into this very, very, very deep. That was August 19th, 2011. 20 minutes after that, Leon Panetta, Secretary of Defense, he comes up, shakes my hand, he says, Mr. Strange, I'm going to ask the same questions. I said, you're going to ask the same questions? You motherfucker, you the Secretary of Defense? That's when they asked me to leave for a little while. You're going to have my son's dead, my 25-year-old son that fought for this country, worked his ass off. He loved it. He'd do it again. But he didn't know he was getting set up. Somebody set him up. When Mike was home in June talking about a will, and the other guy used to say from SEAL Team 6, Dad, don't drink all the beer. I'll see you in 3 months. Says, Dad, I love you. Thank you for the way you raised me. The other guy says, Mom, I hid the will in the freezer. The other guy that damn neck has the whole family come down and his grandmom. They knew somebody was leaking. We need your help. Somebody has to be held accountable so this don't happen to somebody else's son or daughter. Extortion 17. Look it up. Google. My name's Charles Strange. We got a big case coming up with the NSA. Google Larry Klayman. And we have a little foundation, MichaelStrangeFoundation.org. You can see on YouTube, I brought 12 of the parents through, 15 volunteers, and 4 paid grief counselors. So you don't end up in the hat factory. 4 grief counselors. You got to do something. You're not supposed to bury your son or daughter. You know? Thank you so much.